Hello students. So let's move on to the second half of module 4, which is file system interface. These are the topics that we will be learning in file system interface. Okay. So what is file? File is nothing but named collection of related information that is recorded on secondary storage. So you know that file is something which has information which are related to each other, and it is a logical storage. That is, you can't touch file. Okay, so file exists as a logical storage which is in turn stored onto a secondary storage such as magnetic disks, magnetic tapes, optical disks. Okay, and in file you can have varieties of files, that is varieties of data in files. You can have numeric data, you can have character data, you can have binary, and even in programs you can have source programs, you can have text files, you can have object files, executable files. So source program can be, you can have a C program, you can have a Java program, Python program. Text file is nothing but your Word document or any text or notepad that you create. Object file is nothing but you write a source program. No, so when an assembler converts it becomes a object file. Okay, it is in the form of bytes, and big program can be divided into many modules, and each of the module will produce an object file. This object file will be linked together, and when the object files are linked together and finally they are loaded onto the main memory for execution, they become an executable file. Okay, so file system consists of collection of files. So you will be seeing this term often in this particular presentation, that is file system. So file system is nothing but collection of files, and all the information with respect to files are stored in a structure called as directory. Okay, now coming to file attributes. So when a file is created, there are numerous information that are related to the file. So the first one is name. Name is nothing but name that you give to your file. You have to name the file, and it is in human readable form. Coming to identifier, identifier is a unique number that identifies the file, and this is for operating system purpose. It is operating system identifies a file through the unique identifier. Coming to type, you know that there are various types of file. You can have text file, you can have a doc file, you can have a Excel sheet, you can have a CSV file. Okay, so every file is associated with a type. Clear? You can have a multimedia file. You have so many types of files. Location. So whenever a file is created, that file will be stored onto the secondary storage, right? So the location is also a file attribute. Size, that is the number of bytes or the number of kilobytes or the number of megabytes present, that is the size of the file is also stored as an information. Protection is with respect to reading, writing, and executing. That is, if there is a file and if it can only be read, then read permission should be set. If it can only be written to, then only write permission should be set, and only executing, that means execute permission should be set. So there are some permissions that are to be set with respect to protection. And time of the creation of the file, date, and user identification, that is who is the owner, or which are the groups of users that are accessing the files. So all this information should also be present with respect to the file. Okay, as I said, the information of the files are maintained in a directory structure, which in turn is maintained on the disk. Coming to file operations, so you have many file operations. You have create operation. So create is, if you want to create a file, then initially we need to find some space in the disk, right? And only after the space is found, we have to create the file in the disk. We can also write to the file, that is we can use write pointer to point at the location where we need to start writing. We also have read from the file, that is here also we will be using read pointer to show the exact location and from where we have to start reading from the file. Repositioning within the file is nothing but if you want to go to a particular position in the file, Okay, that is when you use this reposition. It has nothing to do with the input output. Okay, so it is just changing the pointer to a certain particular location. Delete. Deleting the file is removing the contents only. That is, you delete the entire file. That is, the content along with the file is erased. Truncate is nothing but there is a difference between delete and truncate. In truncate, you only delete the contents, but the file will be there, but with 0 bytes. Okay, that is, you can add in new information to the file. The file name is still there, that is, the file still exists, but with 0 contents in the file. And you also have some other operations such as appending, renaming, copy, get and set attributes, searching the file. Okay, so every time you want to perform these operations onto the file, then you have to search for the file in the directory, because in the directory we store file information, right? But it is a very tedious task. You cannot go searching the directory each and every time. So instead, what we can do is we can reduce searching in the directory by using two operations, namely open and close. So whenever so many operations have to be performed on the file, we can open the file, and there is a data structure called as open file table that is maintained. So in this open file table, we put the names or the pointers to the file in this open file table. That is, every time a file is open, okay, so the information about all the open files will be stored in the open file table, and then we can perform write, read, repositioning. All these operations can be performed on it, and finally it can be closed. So whenever a file is closed, its entry will be removed from the open file table and it goes back to the disk. Okay, so in order to reduce the searching directory, we can make use of these two system calls, that is open and close. Now, we spoke about open files, right? So in open files, there are many information that is stored. Okay, one is with respect to file pointer. So you know that whenever we open a file, if you remember, the syntax of file is open the file with the name of the file that is written, and you have to mention its permission. Okay, so whenever you open the file, then it returns a pointer, right? It returns a pointer. So pointer to last read or write location. That is, there are many processes which open the same file, right? So for each of the processes, a pointer will be returned. Okay, so this information will be also stored in the open file table. Coming to open count, as I said, many processes can open the same file. So let's say there are 5 processes that have opened one single file. That means the file open count will be 5 now. So when each of the processes finish doing some of the other operation with respect to the file, the count keeps on decrementing. Okay, finally when the count reaches 0, the file is closed and its entry is removed from the open file table, and then the file is written back to the disk location of a file. That is, you can, instead of searching the directory for the file, you can store the information of the file in the memory, such that you can access the file in a faster way than directly going to the directory and searching for it. You can maintain a cache of data access information in the main memory. Access rights, as I said, each of the processes may open the same file, so each of the process may need different permissions to operate on the file. So all these access rights are also stored as a part of information with respect to open files. Okay, so coming to open file locking, so these are some features that are provided by operating systems. Okay, so the purpose of lock is to have protection against unauthorized users. So you have two types of locks, namely shade lock and exclusive locks. If you remember reader writer's problem in module 3, I had mentioned many readers can go to the critical section, but a writer or a reader or a reader or a writer or a writer or a writer cannot enter at the same time. So you can associate the same definition with respect to shade lock. So in shade locks, you can give an example of readers. That is, readers can share the lock and access at the same time. But exclusive lock is, if one writer is writing, then any other process cannot come into or cannot access that particular file. Okay, so this is exclusive locks. So you have two types of locking mechanisms. One is mandatory lock and one is advisory lock. As the name says, mandatory lock is if there is a mandatory lock mechanism. That means if one process has gained exclusive lock over a file, then no other process will be allowed to access that particular file. That is, it has to follow the locking mechanism. In advisory mechanism, this locking mechanism is advised, but it need not be taken seriously by the processes. Okay, whereas in mandatory, if there is a mandatory locking mechanism, then all the processes should abide by this locking mechanism. In advisory, it is left to the processes to decide. That is why it says processes can find status of the locks and decide what to do. So it is not compulsion. It's not compulsory. It is, we don't make this processes obey lock mechanism. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Coming to file types, so I think you're aware of this. You have many file types. So you have executable files, you have a bin file, you have exe file, then object files are having extensions obj. So code files, you have C, C++, Java, ASM, which is assembler, batch files, you have text files, txt and doc. Whenever you store Microsoft documents, you have this doc extension. Then you have word processor. Then you have library files, that is dynamic linking library files, printing or view, that is PDF files, JPG, archive, zip files, multimedia files. So you are very well aware of these kind of file types, right? So every file has a associated file type with it. Okay. Coming to access methods, we have two access methods here: sequential access and direct access, along with another access method that you will see, which is index access method. So these two are very important: sequential access method and direct access method. As the name itself says, in sequential access method, you have to access the content or the disk blocks. Okay, so a disk is divided into disk blocks. Okay, and in each of the disk blocks you may have more than one file. Okay, so if you have to access the disk blocks, or if you have to access the file, contents of the file, then you need to access them in a sequential manner. That is, if you are at a current pointer in a file, then you can only go to the next pointer. For example, if you are at a location 300, then you can either access 301, but you cannot access 302 directly without accessing 301. So this is sequential access. So that is why it is read next or write next, or you can reset right to the beginning of the file. Whereas in direct access, this N is, you can go to a particular location directly. That is, from 300 you can go directly to say 308, 310. That is, this N is, you can directly go to a particular location. You can write from that particular location. Yeah, you can write to that particular location, or you can position to that particular location and then apply read next and write next. That is, N is relative block number. Okay, so this is the schematic view of a sequential file access. As you can see here, you have a beginning and an end, and suppose the pointer is in the current position here in between, so either it can move to the front or you can reset back to the beginning. Okay, so this is sequential access file, and you can simulate sequential access in the form of direct access. Okay, so you have reset, right, in sequential access, which resets the pointer to the beginning. So if you have to implement that for a direct access, it is nothing but current position is pointing to 0. If you have to implement read next, then this is how it is implemented in direct access. It is read the current position, and then current position is incremented by 1. Write next is similar to the previous one. Instead, we are writing to the current position, and then current position is incremented by 1. This is how we simulate sequential access on a direct access. There is another access method which is called index access method. So here, whenever we have huge files, we can actually store the indexes of each of the files. For example, Adam is a file, Arthur is a file, Asher is a file. So only we give one particular name of for each of the file, and we store the indexes over here. Okay, so this is termed as index file, and we will set a pointer to a relative file which will have the entire details of the Smith file over here. Sometimes if the file is very huge, then maintaining an index file is going to be difficult, because for each of the file you cannot have an index. So instead we will have indexes for indexes. Okay, for example, I can say from A to B, you will have an index over here. That is, all the names which starts from A to B will have an index over here, and it will be pointing to another file over index. Again, here you will have pointer for A and pointer for B. Let me show you an example. So here, if I have to say indexes of indexes, let me say I have same index for name starting from A and B. So let me say index is 1. So if I take this as an index file for 1, now I will have A here, and then I will have B here. Now this will have an index, some other index. Okay, so A will have an index now starting from A, B, A, C, A, D. Again, one more range, A, E, A, F. Okay, similarly for B. So we create some ranges. Okay, so indexes of index. So has to ease the process of searching. So this is the third access method. In most of the operating systems, we have a combination of sequential access as well as direct access. Okay. So as I said, the information of the file should be stored in a directory. So collection of nodes containing information of files is nothing but directory. So you have directory here represented by circles, and for each of the directory there is a file that is mapped. So both the directory structure and the files reside on the disk, and backup of these two structures are maintained on the tapes. Okay, so it is very important to organize the disk. Okay, so file system organization. So what you can do is, if you have a very big disk, the disk can be divided into disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, and in each of the disks you can have partitions. These partitions, say for example, you have one disk in the laptop, right, and that is divided into 3 partitions: C drive, D drive, E drive. Okay, so if you have more than one disk, then these disks can have more than one partition. So here an example is given. Disk 1 is partition 2, partition A, partition B. That is, as you can see, each of the partitions will have a directory which will store information about the files in that partition. So partition B has a directory which has information of the files that are in partition B. Okay, so you can have, so in this case you have 2 file systems. This is one file system and this is one file system. You can also span 2 disks over one single file system, which is one single partition. So you can divide a disk into 2 partitions, or you can span 2 disks over one single partition. One second. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now coming to directory. So as I said, directory stores the information of the files that are under the directory. So obviously there should be some operations that can be performed in directory. So it should allow us to search for a particular file. Also create a file in the directory, delete a file in the directory, list the contents of a directory, renaming the file that belongs to a particular directory, and traversing the file system. Okay, so now why is directory important, or why is organizing a directory very important? Okay, because all the information with respect to the files will be stored in the directory, so you have to organize the directory, right? Yes. So the importance of organizing directory is it should ease the process of locating a file quickly, right? Efficiency, that is locating the file should be really quick. And what about naming? So the files under the directory should be named in a appropriate way such that it is convenient for the users to locate the files. So you can have more than two users having the same name for different files, and the same file can also have several different names. Okay, so this is possible. That is why it has to be convenient for the users, right? So in that case, organizing a directory is very important, because users may share the same names for two different files. Hence, organizing the directory is really very important. Grouping, logical grouping of the files by property. Sometimes you will have to group similar kind of files under one directory itself, under one single folder or something like that. So grouping or organizing is very important. For example, all Java programs under one single file or a folder, all games in under one single folder or something like that. Okay, so grouping is very important. Now, coming to single level directory, in organizing directories, you have many kinds of organizing directories. First is single level directory. Okay, as the name itself says, there is a single directory for all the users. As you can say, this is a single directory. So you have many names here. So all the and each of the directory have some files that are associated. So if there are more than one user, the users will be sharing the same directory and they will be storing their files here. So it has two problems with respect to naming and grouping, just because all the users are storing their files in the same directory, right? So the naming is a problem, because if there are two users who try to store their files with the same names, then this will cause a problem, right? And even grouping, you don't have an organized form here, right? That is you are not able to group the directories into subdirectories, etc. That is why this is not suitable. Let's move on to the next one, which is two-level directory. Okay, so in two-level directory, we will add one more hierarchy over here, which is master level directory. So whatever disadvantages we saw in the previous one with respect to users, here we are trying to resolve it by creating different directories for each of the users. So user 1 has one directory here, user 2 has a different directory, user 3 has a different, and user 4 has a different directory. So now it is easy with respect to naming the files. Okay, so it is easy, it will be organized, because each of the users can give different names, and the searching also will be easy. Clear? Yeah. So for example, A, the same name is taken over here also. The same name is taken over here. So it is going to be easy, right? So if I have to search for a file A by user 1, I can use the path as user 1 / A, user 2 / A for user 2, user 3 / A for user 3, and user 4 / A for user 4. These are called as path names. That is, we can have the same file name for different user here. So there is efficient searching also, because we will be using path names. But again, there is no grouping capability. We are not able to create subdirectories over here. So this we will try to resolve in another structure called as tree structure directories. Clear? Yeah, here you can say there are more hierarchies that are involved. So you have a root directory here, and root directory have subdirectories here. They in turn have subdirectories. They in turn have subdirectories. So this is a tree structure directories, and these are the general or most common form of directories that are available in most of the operating systems. Okay, so as you can see, this is very flexible, that is tree structured directories. You have many directories with subdirectories and subdirectories again under them, and thus many files under them. Okay, so the advantages of tree structure directories are efficient searching, as you have seen. So since we have more hierarchies that are involved in tree structure directories, that are directories, subdirectories, so searching is even more efficient when compared to single level and two level directory. There is grouping also, because we have subdirectories, under directories, again subdirectories are divided into subdirectories. Okay, so it is very good at grouping. Now, so this work on the concept of current directory. Okay, so everything that you perform will be on the current working directory. So you know, if you want to change your current working directory, if you want to change the directory to the current working directory, then you'll have to use this command cd. Okay, and then give the path name. I hope you are very familiar with this. You have tried this in Unix. Okay, so if you want to change your current directory, you will have to use the command cd. And if you want to list all the files under that particular directory, you can use the command type followed by the directory name here. Okay. Now, coming to absolute or relative path name here. So this is simple. Absolute is nothing but if you start searching for the file right from the root, then it is absolute searching. Okay, so if you start searching the file from the root, that is beginning from the root, that is slash root, it starts from slash root, then it is absolute searching. Relative path is nothing but, suppose you are in a current directory, okay, somewhere in between. So if you start searching from the current directory, then that is relative. If you start from the root, it is absolute. If you start from the current directory, if you start the path from the current directory, then it is relative. Creating a new file is always done in the current directory. That is, whatever you do will be reflected in the current directory itself. Deleting a file in the current directory, we can use this command rm. If you want to create a subdirectory under the current directory, then you have to make use of mkdir. That is, there is an example here. If the current directory is /mail and you want to create a subdirectory under mail, then you have to use the command mkdir. So under mail directory, you can now create a subdirectory count using the command mkdir. So in most of the operating systems, it is, if you delete the mail directory, then the entire subtree rooted under the mail tree will be deleted. Mail directory will be deleted. Okay. Acyclic graphs. So one problem in the previous one, that is tree structure directory, is that suppose there is a project group, okay, and two people are working on that project group, and they are working in different directories. That is, they are working on the same file but from different directories. So they need to access the same file from different directories. If that is the case, then tree structure directory will not enable or will not allow such kind of sharing of directories. So we have a suitable directory here called as acyclic directory, wherein sharing of directories can happen. As you can see, suppose let's say one user is working in DICT directory and one user is working in spell directory, and they both are sharing a same directory, subdirectory, which is count, and they are in two different subdirectories right here. So if they want to use the same file here, then we have to use acyclic graph directory. So sharing from two different directories are allowed only in acyclic graph directories. Okay. So general graph directory is also similar to acyclic graph directory, not very important. But then if cycles are involved in any directories, then sometimes it so happens that the same files will be searched forever. Okay, so it will return into an infinite loop. That is why, to avoid that, we can also use general graph directories. File system mounting. Coming to file system mounting. So file system mounting is nothing but you have two file systems. Okay, so this is, as you can say, I can give you an example of, suppose when you insert a pen drive, you want to copy some file from the pen drive onto your desktop or a laptop. So copying that is nothing but mounting the file. Okay, so let's say you have two file systems. One, the file system in pen drive needs to be mounted onto your desktop or laptop. So this process is called as mounting. So file system must be mounted before it can be accessed. Okay, so suppose you want to mount the data or the file system in pen drive to the desktop or laptop, the point to which you mount, okay, is called as mount point. Okay, that is what unmounted file system is mounted at mount point. That is, this is unmounted file system which is mounted at a point called as mount point. Okay, so there is a example here. So let's say the figure A shows existing file system, and this is the one that you need to mount. Okay, so this is supposed to be mount. So this is supposed to be mounted at users. Clear? So when it is mounted, this users is called as a mount point, and this should go and get attached to this. Clear? So when it gets attached, this is how it will look. Okay, this is how it will look. See here, users. So it gets attached there, and then instead of Bill, you have Sue here, and instead of Fred, you have Jane here, and then Jane has its own sub files that are prog and doc. Okay, so this is how mounting works. Coming to file sharing, so you know the concept of file sharing, why file sharing is very important. So there are many ways to share files. Clear? So we will see the ways to share files, different ways to share files. You can share files in the same system or in the network of systems when there are multiple users that are involved. Okay, so we can have the concept of user IDs and group IDs. Okay, so group IDs is you can have set of group you can have a group wherein you'll have many users, and these users can access the same file. So you can create these user IDs or group IDs in Windows operating system. So user IDs identifies users, and you can set permissions and protections to be per user. Group IDs allow users to be in groups permitting group access rights. So it is every person in the group will have the same access right. So this will be different. Okay, so access rights will be different for each of the users in user ID, and for group ID the access rights will be the same for the entire group. This is how they can share the file. This is for multiple users, and you can also share the file from using remote file systems. So suppose there are two systems which are geographically separated. So there are many ways to access the files. One is using file transfer protocol. Okay, you can run this protocol in the client system to access a file that is remotely placed in some server. You can also use distributed file systems. Okay, distributed file system is also a network of systems which are distributed geographically. Then you can also access the files using, or you can share the files or access the files using www, which is World Wide Web. You can also share files using client server model. Okay, model allows clients to mount. So this is what clients will be mounting remote file systems from servers. Okay? Server can serve multiple clients, and NFS is a very famous network file system which is a standard Unix client server file sharing protocol. CISF is for Windows. You can also have distributed uniformation systems such as LDAP, DNS, which is domain name service, and NIS. The domain name service is nothing but if you want to try accessing a website, right? For example, www.google.com. So that is the domain name. Okay, that will be converted to a address later on using some network protocols. Okay, that is how you can access the files or you can share the files remotely. Coming to the other access. One second. Okay. Protection. So you can set permissions to files in order to protect the files. That is, you can restrict the access of files with respect to reading, writing, or execution. Okay. So what can be done to a file and by whom is access protection. Clear? So you can have read access, you can have write access, you can append, you can delete, or you can list. These are the types of accesses that we can have. Access list. So access list is nothing but suppose you have a file, okay, and you want to set access rights to that particular file. So you can set that access rights through access list. That is, you can try this out. You can right click on any file that you have, for example a Windows file, a Word file, and then you have a security option in that. Okay, in security option you can actually set permissions to that particular file with respect to read, write, execute. Yeah, you can set permissions. Usually the permissions will be true for all the read, write, and execute. You can set your own permissions for a particular file. Okay, and we have three classes of users. One is owner, one is group, and one is public. And we have totally 9 bits, guys. 3 bits for owner, 3 bits for group, and 3 bits for public. And it starts from read, write, and execute. And most of the times for owner, all the 3 bits are set because he will be the one who would have created the file, right? So RWX is set to 1. And if you try to convert this into decimal, you get a value 7. For group, for example, here we have said the group can read and the group can write, but the group cannot execute. And for public, they can only execute, but they cannot read or write the file. So its decimal value is 1. This is how you can set access rights. Okay. So we can ask the manager to create a group. Unique name can be given to a group, and we can add some users to that particular group. Fine. So suppose you want to create a group, then you have to ask the manager to do, and you want to change permissions. See, for example, you have CHGRP, right? So if you want to create or change, for example, let's say this is a name of the directory, and you had a group by name office, okay, and you want to change it to G, then you'll have to use this particular command, okay, to change the name of the group. Suppose you want to change the name of the owner, then CHOWN should be used. That is, this file is the name of the file, and the name of the current owner should be changed to the name that you have decided now. Okay, that is, the new name should be given here. And for setting the access rights, you have a command called as chmod. Here, chmod, and this is the name of the file, and this is what I was talking about, the 9 bits right here, owner, group, and public. So here we have set, let's say there was a file called as game, and for owner 7 was set. It means all the 3, read, write, and execute, was enabled, and for group only read, write, that is 6, and for the public it was only 1. Yeah. Okay. Okay. There is a problem here.